And sure, those things can help other people. I don't have a qualm with that.
It would not be useful to distinguish between selfish and self-interest because um, I always distinguish short-term selfishness and long-term selfishness because, like, if you look over the short term, um, just taking what you want from anybody you see walking around in society is clearly a strategy that will get you alienated from society, and that's clearly not in your long-term um, self-interest, as it were, because living outside of society is incredibly challenging. Now,
So,
living in society and not taking everyone's shit just randomly and respecting their ownership of what they have. That tends to get people to want to play this game called society with you. They want to engage with you, and it makes the ability to survive incredibly, like, orders of magnitude that much easier. So I I think it's important that we distinguish from selfish and self-interest. When people say selfish, they think you're like the take what you want here and now, only for me, 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 me. When you need to look at it over the long term, what's best for you over the long term, and that's how you arrive at seemingly short-term selfless acts.
so at least for myself, I'm just going to jump in. Then other people can, of course, as well. I want to clarify and thank you for bringing that up, deniability, because I've been a little washy on my own terminology. When I have used the term selfish so far in the conversation, I am referring to what you're referring to. So I should probably use the terms that you're using of long-term self-interest. I would agree with everything you just said, at least personally.
Yeah, so to borrow from Simon Sinek, um, in the context of an iterative game or an infinite game, the optimal, even in the prisoner's dilemma, the optimal strategy is to act in a selfless manner.
Cooperative.
Act in a
Cooperative way.
sorry, act in a cooperative way, at least until the other party stops cooperating.
Yeah, like the problem is not really about being selfish, but the term selfless, because no action is actually truly selfless. No one actually does anything without wanting to do it and having some justification for why it benefits them.
So listening to what all you guys are saying, I kind of want to dial in on the word cooperate. Um, I think that's really insightful because I think what people mean when they say that something is selfish is that um, there's sort of this like cooperative loop that occurs where people do good deeds to each other, and there's sort of a net gain type of thing that occurs when we all decide to do that. And when someone refuses to participate in that sort of cooperative loop of good deeds, and they're only taking, right? They're only taking the benefits of society and they're not willing to contribute into that social game that we all play, then we say, well, that person is more of a drain on society, and we would be better off without them, basically.
Well, yeah, like in this sense,
Correct.
the best distinction is the difference between a net positive transaction and net negative transaction. When you're truly selfish, usually you're doing something in a net negative way because you harm other people and gain some usually less significant gain from it. And when people are cooperating, usually it's a net positive interaction between people because everyone gets what they want, and at the same time they build a foundation for more productive
Yeah, I really like
activities.
that. Yeah, I like the way you put it in terms of net gain versus net loss, because then I think that it sort of explains the sort of Robin Hood principle. Like people tend to, I don't know, sort of idealize like the weak taking from the strong. Maybe not in every case, but they're certainly more open to that than the strong taking from the weak. In part because whatever they're taking, whether it's money or whatever, um, the gain for the person who's worse off initially is far greater than the gain would be for the person who's really well off, and so you have a net gain, I think, when one person loses something unimportant and gives it to someone who values it highly.
Yeah. And again, it results in a net positive.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of
result.
That kind of justifies the notion of trade too, like commerce. People have things that are less valuable to them, but more valuable to the other, and they trade.
Yeah, and when you get more and more value, it basically diminishing returns. The more you get, the less its value compared to the prior. Deniability. You want to say something? Go ahead.
By the way, that's liberal humanism.
What's liberal humanism now? What? Huh?
No, I was just saying, like, it was seeing potential, looking out for others' well-being, and helping them. They could do better in society, be more productive, be more innovative, and create, and just and that ends up paying back to society in its enrichment.
Okay.
Deniability. Did you
Well,
have something different you wanted to bring in?
Let me think about it a
Okay.
moment further.
Because you had your mic off and someone commented and we got in a whole... Damn it. You had something divine evil. Go ahead.
Yeah, like it's like I usually say, it's always best to look for the balance, because like all the socialist and capitalist like ideologies always strive for extreme bounds, and it never works in a positive way, because
I just stated the balance.
well,
1 second.
like again, you're bringing up socialism, but socialism, as you know, often brings up demands for people to give up their value, which
I
is
didn't mean to
not
trigger
very.
you.
I'm not.
I did say
Socialism-
this conversation
One
was
second,
about
guys.
socialism the whole time. We were having
Stop,
this
guys.
conversation.
Whatever.
Maybe it
Stop.
was socialism.
Stop. I'm pausing
Okay,
this
let's
right
get
now.
Okay.
We are not having a political conversation today. That Morality Monday is not meant to be political. I'm not letting it be political.
I didn't mean that.
No, I know you didn't. We were starting to drift that way.
So,
I'm just
Alex, are you
stopping
a fan of Trump?
Fan?
I'm just ragging on you, Nivik.
It's a fun question that I'm not going to answer today. But one thing I want to pivot to, because I want to ask you guys about this. In preparation for today, I did some research on different values, what different people see as values, so I could at least feel prepared for some of the things you guys might bring up. And out of this list of, hundreds and hundreds of values that I was able to find, there's so many that haven't been touched on at all. There's control and power and mercy and tolerance and diversity and individuality and insight and chastity. All these things have been not touched on at all, and maybe no one values them. But I'm curious if there's any other values that people want to bring up, because we've really just focused on this well-being thing. And and that's why I was asking you guys, like, what's the pinnacle value and what's the like most foundational? Because there could be stuff in between we haven't even looked at yet.
I think discipline, as a matter of practice for discipline's sake, is a very good thing. Being able to, I'm not quite sure what it is, but like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I've personally found joy in fasting and restraint and exercising discipline. It makes me feel more psychologically stable and better able to deal with the reality of the world. I feel overindulgence as the opposite to that is problematic in all its forms.
Well, of course, there's a lot of different values, but again, there are high-end like subsets of the same core value of survival, because it's an emergent, different emergent factors of the social life that we have, social structure that we have. Like the control is the idea of guiding the actions of other people in order to achieve some specific goal, basically. And some people may value being in power. Some people just fine by themselves and fulfilling their own desires and interacting with a few people that they find like.
So that's kind of the point I'm getting at, Divine Evo. Like, do you think that there's other things after survival that and the like control adaptation piece like that people have to be or should do like what you're posting there is
I
some
think
people might want control, some people might not, but are there people who is there a thing that we need, you know?
yeah, Alexander, I think
Go ahead,
it's highly role dependent. So, like for example, in a leader, I value vision and communication skills. In a in a pilot, I value control. Right? I don't necessarily want my leaders controlling, but I want my pilots controlling. And in a partner, I value, you know, totally different, depending on what kind of partner it is, totally different character attributes than I would value in a leader or a subcontractor. In an employee, I value somebody who questions everything and shows up on time and works hard and gets the job done. Right? I don't value that in a leader necessarily.
Right.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's a result of our society's ability to allow individuals to specialize. So the different specializations of people and their qualifications make them it makes it preferable for them to have certain values. Like the overarching thing for the society, for our species as a highly social beings, I think is truth. I think it's like overarching idea of true knowledge, because it basically informs all of our actions and allows us to achieve our goals. If you only have true knowledge, and if you have all the knowledge, you can basically do anything what is possible. And I think we're lacking in that regard currently quite a bit, because truth is unnecessarily discarded and looked down upon, and many people are ignorant of real problems that have to be addressed.
So kind of along this point, like some of the values that I've heard, other than the well-being actualization kind of stuff, like earlier, I'm gotta check my notes. Earlier, Doolittle mentioned responsibility. Divine's talking about truth. Deniability mentioned honesty. Like, is there anyone who would say, for some reason, that those things, those in particular, should not be anywhere on the hierarchy. Like, yeah, there's some people I want to lie to me, and those people should not go for truth. That's bad for them. Like, does anyone have that kind of perspective?
And don't worry, we allow you to air incorrect thoughts. Sorry.
We allow you to have thoughts and argue if they're correct.
So are we talking about like no, under all circumstances I think this is a horrible idea, or are we talking about like I want to push back because I don't think that this is I wouldn't elevate this to the extent that other people might. Like what are we trying to
the second
one?
The second one. Like we're talking about like elevating it to the point that it has universal or near universal value. It's really, really important.
Yeah,
if you think it's just sometimes important, then that doesn't apply. That's against the argument.
Well, I would push back slightly on the responsibility one. I think responsibility is hugely important. I actually think it's one of my top values, but I think that there's a sort of yin yang kind of balance thing that needs to happen with that. If everyone is perfectly willing to accept responsibility for everything that they might conceivably have a stake in, then I think you can get into some issues where you're not able to call out systemic problems that don't really come down to individual responsibility. I think in the short term, like from a narrow perspective, responsibility is very good because by taking ownership of the burden of something, you're alleviating that burden from other people, and the more people do that, I think the better. I think society will be better. But there are situations where it's just not that helpful, from the larger perspective to just say, the solution to this problem is everyone take responsibility for their own angle on this issue. It might be better if we all kind of think outside of the box and come up with a solution that doesn't require so much responsibility, or might set us all up for success in a better way. And I think if we're dogmatic about responsibility, we can fall into the trap of not seeing that, and vice versa too. I think people can sort of, I don't know, shift the blame over to society or structures or whatever, so much that they personally feel incapacitated to act in a responsible way, and that could be really dangerous. So I think there's a balance to be struck there.
So that's kind of why I think honesty is a global universal, in the sense that what you just described there, if you were to engage in that sort of that social game, and someone in that game was dishonest in that, then you could see how taking responsibility could get quite twisted either way. So that it's just to say that I don't see how you can achieve any other value in any hierarchy unless you're being honest with yourself and the people around you.
So I
and
think
if everyone was that, it would necessarily seriously uncomplicate our society.
deniability. I think I agree with you. Like if we kind of use the sort of colloquial understanding of what you mean by honesty, I don't think any of us here would want someone who, like, if someone thought I was fat or something or ugly or whatever, I wouldn't want them to, every time they saw me, tell me, "Hey, I think you're ugly." I mean, there's like giving, just because they think that doesn't mean it's helpful, right? And so I think I would almost think of it as like an
being
altruistic
honest,
gift of truth,
yeah, being honest doesn't mean you have to go around telling people every fucking thought in your head,
right?
know? But like, if you're fat, and you ask me, do I look fat? I'm going to say yes. Because that's the honest truth. And you ask
Sure.
me a question, and I'm going to answer honestly. And if I said, no, you're not fat, now I'm introducing a complication that leads to other what I consider unacceptable harms, like all the health conditions that come with obesity. I feel like I would be partaking in that. So I feel the most appropriate response is for me to be honest with someone if they ask me the question. But like, just
So
because I believe in honesty doesn't mean I think like I should tell someone that they're fat if I see that they're fat. No, like if you
I
ask me, I'll
guess
tell you.
yeah, I get that. I guess I'm just trying to push back in a way that we can define honesty a little bit more uh, concretely. Like, just because I think a huge part of what most people think of as dishonesty is actually like withholding any information at all. It doesn't have to be giving false information. Just
Those people
simply
are
withholding
silly.
information is
Uh,
can be a problem. Um,
I would argue that that's not being truthful.
right.
I think there is a difference there because how I view honesty is I don't mislead people when I speak.
So
Doesn't
you think
put a
there's
requirement on me to
situations?
speak.
Okay, so you think there's situations that demand information from you in some way, and to withhold it would be a problem, and to give false
Oh
information would be a
no,
problem.
no, only to give false information. So like a lot of people like will say, well, what about like secrets and stuff like that? It's far more utility to say, I get that you want this information and I can't give it to you, but I'm not going to give it to you. Instead
Okay.
of telling a lie, you know, like I mean, take the government for example. Be a lot more easy to trust and respect the authority of the government if, when we asked, did this happen, they turned around and said, listen, we're censoring it, and you you can't know it because it's going to affect whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Um, if instead they said, no, we definitely didn't do that. Actually, it was this over here, and they spun some story, then
Yeah.
like that could very quickly like overcomplicate the matter, you know. So
So
it doesn't necessitate that you have to reveal the truth,
what about
but it's
half
just simply
truths?
don't lie.
What about half
You know,
truths, where nothing you say is technically a lie, but the intent is to obfuscate the truth, but everything you say is actually true?
well, no, that would be engaging in some form of dishonesty. Like if you set out with the intent to get someone to not perceive the truth, that's being dishonest. You know, but
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is
and
you should be trying to give people a perception of truth, a true
yeah,
perception.
yes. Well, if you ask me a question that I don't want to answer, like I'm very apt about my anonymity, right? To be honest, I don't have to like tell you who I am and come appear on video camera. I can just simply say I don't want to tell you because I value my anonymity. That is an honest statement. Now, it doesn't get you any further as to what my identity is, but like I'm still being honest.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm
withholding.
telling you, I don't want you to have the information. I'm not going to share it with you, and that's just the situation. That's me being honest with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
the withholding the truth is a question of responsibility. So
That's just you.
if you have responsibility to give information to other on demand, then if you not give that information, you are being irresponsible. If you have the right to withhold the truth,
That's an
then you
interesting
just
angle.
yeah. The responsibility is basically making a decision to be obligated in some sense, and responsibility has to be correctly correlated with your competence, basically.
But
Like
the conversation is
when
about Doing what? Doing good.
Well,
That's where it
good,
originated
sure.
from, and it was like, well, but people should take responsibility
Well,
for the things that they're responsible for, and that's when it went over to, well, people should tell the truth, meaning like, well, you have a responsibility to be honest, and that would be that's where you should start in being
well,
responsible.
you have to take responsibility that is proportional to your competence, to your ability to uphold the responsibility you have taken.
No, you're
If
not following
you're
my
being
connection though.
If you are dishonest and you're taking the responsibility that you are intended not to fulfill, then
You
you're
didn't
being
follow what I'm
dishonest.
saying though. You're not following my connection. I'm saying about meaning well at one point, and then you're saying you have a responsibility to tell the truth. But what if lying is to mean well? Like you're lying for something. If lying is to have a positive thing,
For example, give me an example.
isn't that a well? Don't tell your kid that they're dying of cancer. I guess. If a person I'm not.
Well, if you don't
I
tell,
don't have to. I don't have
if
to
you
give you
don't
an
tell,
example. I don't have to give you an
you,
example. Like
if you're making
Guys,
a point, you should.
I'm gonna jump in for a second. I think it's worth, for the sake of conversation, and this goes for everyone. When we're talking about values, we're obviously prescribing some level of good or justness or helpfulness to them. But the values themselves don't necessarily have that embedded. I mean, that's where we position the value. I think what the conversation is here is just there's honesty and there's responsibility. And responsibility is its own thing. You can be dishonest and take responsibility for all the lies you tell. And you can be honest but be generally negligent in your other affairs. So they're two separate things that can be related but aren't necessarily.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's a good point to make. I think it's a point that other people might want to debate. And it might be an interesting question to ask, actually. But I don't think I disagree with you there.
Yeah, like there are different things because like you can take up on a work and say that you can do this work, but you actually can't. You do not have the knowledge, for example, and that would be a problem of truth. You're lying. You're being dishonest. And from another point, you can take the work, you can do the work, but you don't. You fail to do the work, and that is a problem of responsibility. You have failed to meet the burden of responsibility that you took. It's a separate issue.
how's this scenario? And the landlord asked if a person had guests over when that they're not supposed to, and you saying that would mean that they'd be evicted. Would you just follow your policy of being truthful?
Can you repeat the situation?
I'm saying, like, what if there's a scenario and a landlord asks you if there's guests over, and that could potentially mean that they get evicted? Would you just be honest with the landlord and tell them, like, would you? Okay, let me give you another example. I was just using an example, like a guest, like they're not supposed to have guests stay living in. It's a single unit, and and people aren't supposed. Only one person's supposed to live in a unit, and if you probably bring it to the landlord's attention that they had somebody living there, and that by the landlord asking you, would you tell the landlord, because you have a principle of being truthful, but that would mean the person would be evicted.
I think Mivik's hiding some chick under his bed. I think that's what's going on here.
Like it's not like in this situation. It's like it's a different.
Nice try,
You
Travis.
you can look at it from the point of what you should do, and you can look at it from the point of what what is the like the truthful action would be. Like if you're bringing the guest that shouldn't be there, you're already like irresponsible. You're already doing something that you're not supposed to. This
So
is
you
the first
tell.
problem.
So
So
that's your
yeah,
truth. Okay, cool.
yeah.
No, that's I don't think that's cool, but cool.
Well, you should bring the guest in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. You tell them that when they say, "Hey, what the hell, man?" Well, you shouldn't bring the guests in the first place. Have a nice
Well,
day.
yeah. In the best case scenario, you should discuss. You should ask them if you can bring the guest, or you can try to convince them that it's okay if you bring the guest. If you're not supposed to bring the guest and you do, then you're dropping yourself in the trap
What if
where
the guest was
no
in
matter
such a serious situation and that person wasn't doing good? Would you tell no matter what the circumstances?
well if you value truth more, then yes.
No. Well,
Okay,
more
so
than
Like are you trying to
I'm mixing up well-being if of being considerate and the belief of always being truthful. But I got your answer. Cool.
so let's go back to and if you guys want, I'm sharing my screen right now, so there's an opportunity to watch, at least for the people on Discord, you can see it. I've been trying to kind of get a sense of where people stand and if there's any consensus here, though I don't expect there to be. And some people have said that responsibility or even something like honesty are the most foundational thing. And other people seem to like agree with those concepts, but not place them under, so to speak, well-being or something like that. So I'm trying to get a sense of where we might have discrepancy on what's more important.
So, Travis, like, if you're in a place where it's illegal to have weed and the cops ask about you having weed, be careful.
No, I'll just say I have one joint. It's in my
Well, no,
ass.
I'm just saying.
It.
No, I'm just
I
saying,
live
with divine.
yeah, I live in a country
It's-
where it is illegal and
There you go.
nobody ever asked me.
So off to jail you go, Travis.
Yeah, no,
He can't-
Nivik, I
he's-
think you're bringing up a good point. This idea,
Yeah.
this idea of honesty
bro.
only goes so far. And anyone who's going to stand over, and here's where this all breaks down. You get to a point where you're standing over your daughter who's dying. Let's just say, for sake of argument, you're an atheist and you don't believe in an afterlife, but your daughter's on her last few legs and she's dying of cancer, and she says, "Daddy, I'm so excited to be with you and mommy in heaven and brother and doggy and all these things." By the way, she's got a couple days left. And she says, "You believe that too, right, Daddy? You believe that you're going to see me again, right? I'm going to get to see you again, right?" This is why my moral foundation is based on maximizing well-being for myself and those around me. In that situation, this is where Sam Harris's lying philosophy falls apart. In that situation, it is the moral thing to do, as far as I can tell through my maximized well-being perspective, to lie to that child and say, "Oh yeah, definitely, and we're going to have so much fun. There's going to be your favorite cakes all the time. There's going to be your favorite..." Because what would be the point of trying to enlighten her into the skeptical issues with adopting an afterlife as a belief?
Yeah, but
Can't-
like again, it's the reason why I have brought my first response to the topic, and I presented the values as the hierarchy. It's because there are things that are the most important, and on top of them there are subsets which
Sure.
are
Yeah.
allowing you to be better at what they emerge from.
It's just when we get into this, people getting too obsessed with honesty all the time, like it makes moral sense to tell the truth all the time when someone asks if they look fat, and you just answer based on your perception of what fat is and whether they look it. That I think you would be a moral retard in that case.
Yeah, and so that's the reason why there is like a conflict in what Nivik asked presented as an example is that like he asks me what is the best way to act in accordance to what? In accordance to comfort, in accordance to survivability, in accordance to truth. So if you depending on what is your core value, what is your value in that situation, you may you act differently. But again, the truth, as a value is the overarching. It comes from like if you there is no reason to tell the truth if it leads to your demise. Even like if like what you Therese brought up is that would be taking the comfort over the truth.
Wait, you
So
mean
yeah.
if you tell the truth and somebody dies, then that's where you draw the line? Like if you
No.
wouldn't.
Any value that is more important than truth, you choose the more important value. That's basically how we act. That's why we lie. In effect, there is no other reason. There is something more important than telling the truth. Otherwise, there is no reason.
So are you talking about like morally or what?
Well, yeah, like, do you think it's immoral to lie?
Well, if you're a deontologist,
Depends.
presumably.
It looks like we got a lot of new people. Just one sec. Go ahead, Alex.
Before we get into all that, because we do have a lot of new people, I want to pass the mic around a little bit and get other people's stances on core values, what their core values are, and then we can get into some more discussion about this. So, I'm just gonna go in like the Discord alphabetical order, just because that's easiest. Because we got like 8 people I gotta go through. So Yuri, you're up first. What are your core values?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, like what do you mean the like core? Are you asking for like my meta ethical view?
You could take it as that. Just trying to leave it as basic and general for people. Like, just what is the most foundationally important thing that's, the most important, biggest deal to you for governing your life or human life in general? After survival, we're kind of keeping that for granted.
I guess reason.
Okay.
The ability to reason. To make inferences, things like that, to be a rational agent.
And what would be your... I phrased this so many different ways today, but like highest or pinnacle value, like the thing that is more important than it, or not more important, the thing that if we had reason and we had whatever you think follows that, we'd ultimately reach something. What do you think that value is? If that makes sense.
I'm not sure I understand. Sorry.
Like have you heard of the concept of like self-actualization? Like some people put that at the top. Like after we all have our health and we all have reason and we all have, loved one or something like that, we eventually get to this state of like we've achieved everything we can kind of thing. Like, do you have something that's equivalent to that?
To be honest with you, not really. Nothing in like the grand scheme of things. No.
What do you value most in your best friend?
Oh, that's a different way of looking at it.
I guess people. I guess people who I'm close with or who I respect.
Yeah. What about them do you respect?
Well, I respect their ability to be honest, to be that possess like properties of like what I deem to be friendly, to be knowledgeable, things like that.
Okay, so then it'd be fair to say that honesty, knowledge, and politeness are in your value hierarchy.
Yeah, I guess pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good way of asking that deniability. Mark, same, or Mark Doft, I think is what that is. Same
Yeah.
series of questions. What are your core values?
What are my core values?
Mhm.
I don't think I have any.
Or maybe a way to phrase it is the way that deniability used, like what is most important to you in other people? Like what qualities do you value?
I think that's going to be arbitrary and based off of like what people take value to be.
Well, I mean for you personally, not just people in general.
Arguing on Discord or something, I guess. I don't.
How about you, Crispy? Core values?
I don't think I really understand the question, but
It's it's kind of asking to like, what do you think is foundational for living a good or moral life? Like a lot of people in this room, not everyone, but a lot of people have said like well-being for themselves or others, or doing the least harm or something of that nature. Like that's their most important thing, and then there's other stuff that follows from that. Like, do you have something you would put in that general category of this is the thing I want most for people?
yeah, maybe fame, money, and power.
Is that like the basic thing, or you want everyone to like eventually get to kind of thing? If that makes sense.
Well, no, I don't want anyone else to get it.
Are you just for a second? I see we got a lot of new people in the room. Crispy, are you here to troll or what? Are you going to answer the question?
No, I just didn't expect to be asked questions. I'm here to listen.
Oh, that's fine. You have the option to do that. I'm just
sensing. Hang on though. I'm sensing we do have a few trolls in the room here. If you guys are interested in trolling, just leave.
Some deep fried, crispy hot takes.
I agree with Trav's stance.
I mean, to be fair, the question that's being asked is like really weird, I guess.
So maybe this will help frame it a bit better. Do you guys necessarily agree that common shared values is what binds society together?
Look, I just take society to be comprised of like institutional, so I'm not sure what you're asking.
So I think that's why you find the question confusing, because from my perspective, values do bind society, and the better those values are arranged in, the more appropriately they're arranged in a hierarchy, the better that society functions.
Can I ask Yuri something? Yuri, why
hold on,
wait one
wait
second.
a second. So at the base of the question, when we ask like, what's your core value? What is that value at the top of your value hierarchy that you think is fundamental to how society plays itself out over time and generations?
Like, it's just like, I mean, it just sounds like are you just asking like subjectively? Like, it's just going to be arbitrary, like Mark Booth pointed out. Like, I just don't see why that is like interesting, right? Because you could run into someone who has like core values that are going to be antithetical, right, to what people find in like basic societal institutional norms, right?
So
there is an objective measure in the way society is constructed.
1 second,
right? But like in like society, we could have like we have like obviously institutional norms in which people don't think that like people don't want a society in which there's like food pangs and like people killing each other and things like that, right? Or unjustifiably killing each other, right? And you could have like an agent, right, who has like ethical desires that are going to be contrary to that, right? So like, I mean, like, what's the point?
So I want to clarify this for everyone who's recently shown up in the Discord. I don't know if any of you have been on this Discord before, if you've seen the Pangburn YouTube videos. I don't know what you know, but I just want to clarify the way this is laid out. This Discord is about, I mean, a lot of things, but generally it tends to be very philosophical, talking about the nature of life, the nature of humanity and well-being and things like that. The talk today is we do these on Mondays. We talk about morality. And these conversations tend to be very abstract, very esoteric. People get into arguments about what's subjective and what's objective, and that's just what we're here to do.
Right. Like I'm not confused about that. I'm new to this, so I didn't know you guys had Moral Mondays or whatever. But like that's why I asked you in the beginning if like you just wanted me to cut to the chase and give you my meta ethical view, right? But you were like, no. Because I mean I don't. It sounds like if I can just like postulate for a bit, it just sounds like you're talking about applied ethics and stuff like that. I'm not very knowledgeable on that subject, so I analyze like moral propositions and from like a meta ethical framework, right? Like applied ethics isn't really like useful to me in any way.
And that's okay. And you can answer the questions from a meta ethical perspective. I don't have a problem with that. The issue that I'm kind of trying to police a little bit is that sometimes it happens, and I know you haven't been here before, but sometimes it happens on the Discord where people will get into these big like super meta ethical arguments and things like that. And rather than go deep down that road, I want to keep us on what the topic for today is. But if you need to lay out some brief, like, ethical argument to substantiate what you believe, that's okay. I just don't want us drifting off. That was my only point.
So Yuri, for some background, Hanging Chad and I managed to iterate the objectivist subjectivist conversation almost at every turn, pretty much at the end of every conversation that happens on Pangburn Discord. So like basically Alexander's asking you nicely not to submit us to the objectivist subjectivist debate, and maybe just like look at your own subjective perspective and what values you find most appropriate for society.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just like you're just asking people, like you're going around just saying, hey, like what simply like what do you value? Like even though it's like arbitrary, you just want to know, essentially.
Yeah. Well,
right. And then we'll get into discussion where you guys can debate each other, but there's a lot of new people, so I just want everyone to get a chance with the mic.
Yeah, but that's like that's what my intuition that's what my
question.
Here you go.
Or Alexander, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So if this is like at the extent of this is built upon, moral realism or moral anti-realism, like is it okay to be a moral anti-realist or moral nihilist or error theorist or what have you, or non-cognitivist or et cetera, within these types of discussion?
You can be whatever you want. I don't really care. Bring whatever perspective it is, and if people disagree with your perspective for some reason, they'll comment. But I'm not ruling people out of conversation just because they have a view that's different than someone else or because it's anti-realist or something like that. No, you're free to share.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, but
One
just
second,
real quick.
I want to make sure these people get what they have to say out. Go ahead, Yuri.
Yeah, just so it just seems to me real quick that if you're admitting that like all of these like points that we're bringing up are just arbitrary, then like how can there be like a fruitful discussion like from that, right? It would just be like X person holds like some desire or some core value, right? And then like another person has like Y core value or desire. But it doesn't seem to me, I guess if there's realists in here, the conversation would get interesting, but I don't presume everyone here is a realist. It just seems that we would just run into like, we wouldn't get anywhere basically because there'd be nothing to appeal to.
Yuri, what's your moral foundation?
I'm a non-cognitivist if you're asking about my meta-ethical foundation.
No, I'm asking about your moral foundation.
How do you guys get the Pangburn skeptic rule?
Sorry?
I'm just wondering how you get this Pangburn skeptic rule.
When people work on their skeptical foundation enough where I think I would be okay calling them someone who has a solid foundation of skepticism. Are you interested?
Isn't that just trivial? Can you just say, why is that for everything someone says and you're like a skeptic?
Right.
Yeah, okay, so Chisholm, You've been banned here before. I'm giving you another chance. But if you're gonna say nonsensical shit, you're gonna be
Wait.
yawning like a
Wait, what
moment.
was nonsensical about what he said?
A genuine question. Like, look, if I think that like I'm not justified in believing anything, and so whenever you say something, I'm like, well, what's the justification for that? I'm just being a skeptic, haven't I?
So what's your moral foundation?
Are you asking me or Chisholm?
Chisholm.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean by moral foundation here?
Well, let's ask it this way: if you don't understand this basic philosophical terminology, what metric do you use to determine what is good and bad?
That's a loaded question.
The structure.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, though, right?
Hey, before you guys get too triggered, just let Chisholm answer. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, there's like if I have a space of like moral facts, there's no metric I can impose on that space that tells me like this one is worse than this one by this degree and so on, right?
Is raping a baby bad, Chisholm?
Do you mean objectively bad?
No, I'm just asking you bad. I didn't say objective or subjective.
Yeah, I need more information
no,
to understand
I'm just asking you. You walk up. You get no more information from me. I'm throwing you into a hypothetical. You see a man raping a baby. Just listen. Listen. You personally, Chisholm, see a man raping a baby. Is that bad?
Right. You need to explain what bad means.
No,
like
I
if
don't.
I said
and
Pangburn,
if you,
do you think
Chisholm,
sorry.
I know, I remember
Sorry.
you. And if you can't answer that basic conversation, you're going to have a tough time engaging in a conversation.
No, wait,
here.
Pangburn, isn't that a reasonable question though? Because he's wondering whether when you say bad.
I asked him if that thing is bad, and then he asked me, it depends on what you mean by bad. Or what does bad mean?
I'm sorry. Like Travis, you do a great job of encouraging moderators to be more patient with stupidity. And I know I've just broken a whole bunch of rules, but I couldn't stand it anymore.
No,
you guys are trolling.
I know there's trolling going on here, and let's police it, guys. And I trust you to do that. I just have a couple things to finish here, but I'm going to shut up now because I'm not going to waste my time with trolls.
I'm just not sure about Mark Doft or not, but like I'm pretty sure on the people that I just muted. So you guys can like have a nice day. Thanks. Bye.
So guys, I'm gonna jump in for a second. So for everyone that's here, and I don't know if you're trolling or not, and I'm trying to give you all the benefit of the doubt on this because I want to assume that people aren't. Travis probably has a different definition of trolling than I do, but those who run this Discord, namely Pangburn, but for those of us who are moderators, run it a certain way, and I'm trying to run this conversation a certain way. So if you're confused about the premise or what we're trying to do, we can have a conversation about that, and I can try to explain it. But I do hope that people can play ball a little bit too and try to answer the question. So to address, I'm going to address the Chisholm Pangburn argument, but then I want to go back to Yuri because I was talking to him.
I was trying to help with that situation with Yuri.
1 second, Nivek, because I just want to talk to the new people right now. When Travis means bad, he means bad to you. We're taking it in a subjective sense, and that's not to say that there is no objective morality or anything like that. We're just looking for individual opinions, and we can go on to debate later those opinions, but we just want to get ideas out there because people are going to disagree. I'm just clarifying for everyone, even if you get it, Yuri.
Okay. Just to like in defense of like Chisholm, I don't have any experience with him, so I don't know whether or not like he's trolling or not. So I can only like lead that, I'll hold that to Hangburn's discretion, right? Because he's obviously had past experiences with them. But look, just to kind of like white knight, for lack of a better word, right? Even if you mean like good and bad as like a subjective thing, right? Good and bad, like when you're talking about morals or ethics, right? It's just a loaded question to ask someone like what's good or bad, right? Because they could be like an error theorist, right? And not think that good and bad exists, or like some sort of non-cognitivist, right? And so the language that's going to be used there is going to be like rather different, right? In determining whether or not raping a baby, right, is going to be like problematic or not, right? Or something, or in like most meta-ethical terminology, it would be just, that would be like an undesirable action, or you find that to be like a yucky thing, right? But using good and bad just seems to be like a loaded question, and that's all I wanted to add to that. Like, I'm not trolling or anything, but I just thought I would bring that insight.
So I understand your premise, and I understand your issue with that question. Let's put the baby rape aside for a minute, and let's just go back to the conversation about core values. And if anyone has an argument with the way it's phrased or the premise, we can talk about that. But also, try to answer the question as best as you guys can. And whatever the framework you need to use to answer that, that's fine.
Wait, am I unmuted?
Yeah, no one is server muted right now. You can mute and unmute
wait.
yourselves at your leisure.
Sure. So I appreciate the concern you brought up, but again, when you tried to say something like what it means to be bad is bad to you, right? But bad is just what I'm asking you to define. So if you're using it in the definition, it's not going to help me. Like genuinely asking. I'm not trying to be like
I get
troll,
that.
right? I'm not trying to be like.
I can't tell you what Travis was trying to get at with that. I mean, I have an idea, but I'm not going to speak for him. So I'm going to go back to the discussion that I had crafted for today, and we're going to go off of the core values thing, and we can come back to whatever needs to happen later.
I think I can give an account of what he meant by bad. So the idea would just be something like, if you encountered a baby rape and had the ability to stop it, would you stop it?
I get your point, DE, but I like I said, I don't really care about that conversation right now. We're either going to have the core values conversation or we're not. And if anyone wants to answer the question about what their core values are and engage in that with other people, you are welcome to do that and to stay. But if you're not going to have that conversation, I will kick you out of the conversation, because that is the topic we are having today.
Maybe to steer it away from the subjectivist relativist perspective and give people some assistance, we discussed what you just subjectively consider a good value, right? So people have used, I think, who was it?
I can tell you all the ones that have been said today.
I think Doolittle's stoicism will probably give the best rounded answer to get people's brain juices going and thinking.
Okay, so Dr. Doolittle, someone who's been on the Discord a while, he was here earlier. He made a point that he tends to follow stoicism. So for him, responsibility, the best use of what's in your control, and living with expressing the highest self you can be are his values. Those are the three most important things, with responsibility being the base. So when I ask him what his core values are, he says those three, but fundamentally responsibility first. And then we had a bit of a conversation with him about why responsibility. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
So you guys are asking why this, and we're simply saying give us a reason why you value something and try to substantiate it as best you can.
So, I guess whether people are, I assume a lot of people here are fictionalists about morality, they would say something akin to promoting welfare of sentient people, or something sort of like that. But the language of good or bad is like, I understand that we don't really want to particularly talk on that conversation, and that it can be sort of contentious, and the view of people here that that would be questioned. But the words good or bad, if I may speak briefly on this, is that it demands an imperative that some actor somewhere ought or ought not do a particular action, and that would then have normative implications along with that. Does that make sense?
And I get what you're saying. So if I can ask, Mark, for your view as I understand it, because you posted something in the chat section. Why are you a moral anti-realist, and what does that mean for how you govern yourself?
Okay, so yeah, so two things with that. Firstly, I'm a non-cognitivist towards normative statements. I don't think they're particularly truth apt. And then two, I'm an error theorist with regards to the descriptive moral stuff related to moral facts and whatnot. And I think it's just a very ambiguous and very loaded question and series of questions in relation to good and bad. So what that means is it's kind of like, an error theorist is kind of an atheist towards moral properties. So, like you can say, well, killing is bad. An error theorist would kind of hear that, or like an atheist towards moral properties would be like, well, killing is bad according to God or whatever. It would be like according to God. It's like, well, I don't believe in God, so then it's like very ambiguous.
Yeah. So I get your point. I guess this is my issue with that. You're welcome to be part of this conversation. I'm not kicking you out or saying you shouldn't be there or anything like that. But the way these conversations on Mondays around morals typically work is everyone who's traditionally been here at least accepts that morals exist on some level. And so we debate whether or not those are subjective or objective or what the morals are, etc. But if you don't think that there are any morals, I don't think that you're going to be able to get far with the conversation, because we're talking about what morals are, assuming that they exist. If they don't even exist, then maybe that's a conversation
Can
we
I
have
say
another
something real
day, but
quick?
it's not the... One second, Yuri, but it's not the conversation we have most of the time, and that's what makes it hard. Go ahead, Yuri.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so like as a non-cognitivist, or maybe Mark Deuce is giving some like queer version of like non-cognitivism or error theory. But traditionally, how I understand like what non-cognitivism and error theory are stating is that one, error theory is like a cognitivist position regarding ethics, right? So that means that you think that like moral propositions, right, have some sort of truth value, right? But the non-cognitivist is saying, right, they don't think that moral, when people are saying things that are moral, right? They're not denying that like morals, they're not saying morals don't exist, but they're just saying that morals aren't expressed in terms of propositions. They're just like statements, right? So there's still truth value. They're just merely qualitative, right? So like don't think like the non-cognitivist is saying that morality doesn't exist. He just thinks they're just not propositions.
So then I would want him to substantiate the qualitatives or statements or whatever that he thinks. And I wasn't going off the non-cognitivist point. I was going off of his explanation of being a basically moral atheist. So you guys got to be at least clear with your terms so that I know what you're talking about, because I'm not familiar with all the terms you're using, and no one that I've engaged with in these chats before has used them. So we just got to have clarity. Now, as far as the actual conversation of today, if people want to have the conversation about values, then stay. But if anyone says anything in the next sentence that they say that doesn't have anything to do with values, then I'm going to kick you. Now some of you are exempt from that because you've been here before, and I know where you stand on things. But for those that are new, I am putting the hammer down on this because we need to get back to actual conversation. And if you want to have a talk about are there morals or what different terms mean, we can do that later. We're not going to do that right now.
So there will be a time later where we can talk about the basis and foundation of this.
Sure, there can be. I mean, this Discord is always open. You can always come into the ad hoc chat room, and if someone's available, they might talk to you about it. That I'm just not going to do that now during the span of time that this conversation is going on and that we're streaming.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go to people that I
Can I
recognize.
just say one thing, Alex?
Please, Pangburn.
Did you guys just come to talk about, morality from an atheist versus theist perspective? Like, you guys all came into the Discord together. So what was the idea when you came into the Discord? I'm just interested because you guys came in as like a club.
So
no, I only came in with Jason Lee Scott. I don't know if he's still here. That's the only person I came in with.
Yeah, so
you guys all came in like at the exact same time, just like.
No, I posted a link to this voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm honestly curious. So sorry, go ahead,
yes.
Mark.
So I just think like this kind of talk is like interesting. Yeah, I've watched like some of your videos and they're really good, like with Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris. Those are interesting. But just regarding, just morality and of course I understand that right now you kind of want to focus on the applied aspects of morality. There are some people here who are interested in obviously the foundation of morality as like existing. So it's kind of like like what would God want us to do? And then some people here don't believe in God, as like a analogy, I guess. It's I mean, just here to have a conversation.
Cool.
More or less.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I thought usually when this happens, when people come in groups, they have an idea like they want to get into the God debate, and
oh, yeah.
I think what Alexander's just trying to say is we're not going to go down those roads, but happy to with anyone who is here and interested. Basically at any time, after the program that we're streaming right now, Alexander's show, we do go into Trav's Tav, which is our Discord tavern, and we can talk about any fucking thing there. I'm fine with that. So, but yeah, back to you, Alexander.
Yeah. So I'm gonna jump really quick to Big Lebowski because I know Lebowski. I know that he's gonna kind of play ball with the topic, and we'll see where things go from there. Because I haven't heard from him today. What's up? What are your core values?
Values. I don't know, for just like for dealing with other people, I think one of the biggest things for me is just treat people the way you want to be treated. It's the golden rule. I mean, that pretty much applies across the board, in my opinion.
So like what? So if that's like your base value, like we should all start with golden ruling it. Like what's the pinnacle for you? Like going all the way up to like everyone achieves like the optimal thing. Like what is that idea or that concept to you?
Everybody achieving the optimal thing, just like in their own sense of like well-being or in the greater sense of the group.
It could be either. I've heard people use both kinds of language for it today.
Okay. I mean, I'd say ultimate value is do as little harm as you possibly can.
You're on the deniability plane.
I mean, it's to me when I think about that, it's pretty much the same thing, and from the way that I take it, my understanding of the way I see it is pretty much the same thing as what well-being for yourself and those around you, the Sam Harris position.
Okay, so you're who was that earlier that said this? I think it was Divine Evil and Scientific best. Well, Divine Evil's still here. We're both talking earlier about that, how like well-being and doing the least harm might be part of the same thing. So it sounds like you're kind of jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, from what from the way I take it, that's how I sort of see it. Is try not to cause anything negative for other people unless you absolutely have to. I mean, but if you have to, that typically comes down to where you're preventing something negative or you're contributing to your own well-being over somebody else if they're going to be doing something that's going to, lower your well-being. I think at that point you have a right to, act and diminish their well-being if they're going to be, doing that to you in the first place.
Yeah, of course. And I would agree with that. So regarding really any of this, I mean, we've talked about well-being and least harm, and I'm glad you brought those back up, Scott. We're also talking about like discipline, truth, responsibility, honesty, like some other maybe lesser important but still good values. Either, do you have a stance on that, Lebowski, or we can jump back to, Dal and Divine and Chad? I mean, anyone who knows how this conversation rolls.
Yeah, I definitely have an idea on that. It's something that as sort of like an overarching rule for myself is that one of the most important things that you can do in life is understand the reality in which we exist as close as you possibly can. Obviously, we can never truly do that, but I think being able to know what's know what's what, not just your specific opinion on that thing, is vitally important for any other decisions that are made down the road.
Are you
Wait, just a
considering
quick.
that? Go ahead, Timber.
No, I was just saying that I'm a theist, so probably my values are going to be more like based on my religious upbringing. So in that case, like, what sort of follow-up questions would you want to know?
Well, I guess let's. I'm trying to think because I don't want to presume things, but if you're willing to share, let's start with this. Like, what theology are you talking about? Because I might have some context.
Christianity, like,
Okay.
yeah.
And we've had some other Christians in the Discord before too. So thank you, because that kind of helps me know where to go. Like, what do you consider as the fundamental value in Christianity?
The fundamental value. Well,
Mhm.
I guess you should, believe in. I guess you need to value Christ and accept him as your God, right?
Yeah, and that is the sort of the fundamental of what makes somebody a Christian, right? Otherwise, you're not a Christian.
Yeah, of course. So is so I'm trying to amend this a little bit, just so that we're on more of the same playing field. Though I get the point. Like after an acceptance of Christ, like what is it that I've heard different Christians phrase it different ways, so that's why I'm struggling. Like that God calls you to do or to be, is it honest with people, or look out for people, or be merciful, or whatever that baseline thing is, assuming that you're a believer, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Wait, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, so there's the value of accepting the religion itself, and I get that. But what would the thing that comes after it be for you? Like, what is the core?
Well, you have
thing
to
that
like follow the teachings of Jesus.
Mhm.
Act in a way that like Jesus told you to act.
Like, what is the of those teachings? Which do you consider the most important? I guess is what I'm aiming at.
I'm not sure if I've really like ranked them, I guess, but probably stuff like, do not like harm people, without like further reasons. Don't murder, don't rape, like, just stuff like you said, like be honest, that kind of stuff. Right?
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was trying to understand, so I had a good sense of that. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the
We're on the same page.
Plane. Yeah,
Okay.
same page with that, and same almost playing field in a sense. Just because we have atheists and theists in this conversation, I want to make sure that there's at least some values that we can still kind of all relate to. So that's good to have.
Okay.
So is there any for some of you have been here for a while and you've heard a lot of the conversation, but are there any questions that people have for other people's values or values that they take issue with? And also if you're new to the chat and you want to touch on this, you're welcome to. Oh, go ahead, Timber, if you have more, please.
No, I'm just saying I shared some of my values, so then where does the conversation usually go here? So yeah, go ahead.
So we're kind of talking about like, and I thought maybe we'd get through a whole hierarchy of values on it today, but we probably won't, and that's fine. Where we've kind of been doing it is usually when new people come in, I was asking them what their kind of core values are, and then other people are free to engage with that and say, hey, I disagree with that core value, or I think that's a good one for this reason, etc. So there's kind of a freedom there, and to bring you up to speed, like where you're saying, obviously follow Christ, and then subsequent to that, do no harm. Other people have said maximizing well-being for yourself and others. People have said honesty. People have said responsibility is the baseline. So we've been talking about any objections to any of those things that people have, because everyone seems to have their own perspective, which is kind of what's great about the conversation.
All right, but no objections, I guess, to my core value.
Can you guys hear me?
I think those are good.
Go ahead, Chad.
Oh, hey, cool. Yeah, I have to come in and out, because I'm still at work. I usually don't get off until 7 o'clock Central Time. But yeah, no, I wanted to ask, I think it was Timber talking, right? A pretty good question that Alexander had posed to me earlier at the beginning of this conversation was, like, if everyone in the world was to implement the core values that you have, what would that ultimately reach, and what would that ultimately achieve in society?
Are you asking something like, what would the world look like if everyone shared my values?
Yeah, and is there anything
Or shared
past
my core
that?
values or whatever?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a hard. I mean, I think it would be good. I mean, I think if
Well,
Christianity
yeah.
true, God is good, then I think there'd be a world the peaceful world without people are devout.
That's not what happened, though.
So my question is,
yeah, go
would
ahead.
that effectively bring out some sort of quote unquote heaven on earth? Would that institute the rapture? Like, what would be the ultimate goal for humanity after everyone implements your version of moral, I guess, structure?
I don't know about rapture or I'm just saying that it seems like at least the world I'm imagining is going to be a peaceful one where people are faithful and I don't know if I can say more than that.
Makes sense. Yeah. I
Isn't
mean, that's kind of
isn't that
the.
basically true?
That's not what happened, though.
Wait, what?
Isn't that like basically?
That was
Stop
tried
for a
in the
second.
past.
Stop for a second. DE first, then we'll go to Nivik. You guys responding to Timber. I don't want people over talking each other. Go ahead, DE.
Well, I was just gonna say the peaceful world thing isn't. It doesn't seem like it's very informative. Isn't that true? I mean, it doesn't really what the values are, as long as the values aren't like harming other people, ad nauseum. It just seems sort of. It's like a silly question to ask because the answer is going to be the same no matter what the values are. People are going to be peaceful if they all have the same values, just so long as those values don't involve something that's inherently not peaceful, right? Like,
I do have a reason for asking. Yes, effectively, you're right.
Wait, so are you asking me to give you are you asking me to elaborate on that world, what it would look like, or?
Well, Nivik wanted to get in for a second.
Yeah,
so I'll let him go ahead.
Let's let Nivik go, and then I'll clarify something for DE. Go ahead, Nivik.
No, I mean, people who were religious that did things based on interpretation, because it's open to interpretation, massacre each other until it burnt itself out. The changing of moving away from that path in going to the age of the Renaissance and the scientific revolution and age of reasoning was because that type of subjective thinking wasn't really working, and people wanted to find a new form of authority, and it was based off of fact and logical reasoning. where
So
instead of
spinning
before authority
Stop
was
for a
of
second, guys.
Wait,
Stop, Nivik.
first of all,
Chat.
let me finish.
Wait a second, Chad, and no, wait, Nivik, because I this is important. You and Timber can have this conversation, but you're spinning the question a little bit. The question isn't about the religious value or what's happened historically. We're simply asking if everyone acted the way Timber specifically thinks people would act, what does he think the ultimate outcome would be? So in this context, it doesn't matter that it's based on a religion or that it hasn't worked in the past. We're saying if every human acted like Timber, what would happen? And we have no evidence for knowing that.
Can I continue?
You can continue, but stay on the conversation. Don't go off into what's happened historically with religion, because that's not what I asked. What Chad asked him.
Well, what he was mentioning is what was attempted, and that's what I was addressing. What was attempted, that hypothetical, and being relevant to what he.
Well, I think you're sort of lost on the conversation, but it's okay.
How?
I think I get where you're coming from, but I'm not talking about the practical application quite yet. That's a discussion, like Alexander said, that you can have at another time. And I again, you know me, I'd love to have it. But as of right now, what I wanted to know is like, what is the ultimate goal that Timber's worldview will ultimately reach? Like for me, right, as a moral subjectivist and an atheist, I think that the betterment of humanity through increasing their well-being will ultimately reach a point where every single person can become self-actualized. Now, my question from that is what happens after? So I have
addressing that.
Okay, well, yeah, but I wanted to know what's Timber, and then
Okay.
that also answers your question, because yeah, that's the reason why I'm asking it. I get that if everyone had the same moral compass, nothing ever bad would happen, but what do you think comes after that is my question.
Well, I guess the Bible sort of has some answers there, right? There's going to be like some kind of end times. There's going to be like certain people that are damned, some people that will live in, some sort of afterlife where they, they have kind of eternal life where they coexist. And
yeah, that makes sense. That's why I was asking about the rapture, and I guess that was my terminology, but I didn't. But yeah, thanks.
All right.
Yeah, and so the clarification, what I'm kind of getting to, and I appreciate that you mentioned peace, Timber, because that's more so what I'm looking for, as opposed to like Chad's rapture question, because the rapture, as I understand it, right, that's a thing that happens, and that's fine, but we're talking about like what the value would be, what would be the thing that we would achieve, and peace is a good example of that. Like we could achieve a kind of peace on Earth, and the rapture is kind of the later event kind of thing.
Jesus is quoted as saying, he's quoted as saying, "Do not think I've come to bring peace."
Okay, but yeah, all right. So you know that I sort of see the world as being peaceful. So what's your follow up, Alexander?
What he said, but I bring a sword.
All right.
Not peace.
Well, so it's a good point, Wise Ape, but I didn't have a follow up, Timber. I was just trying to understand your point better. But to what you were saying, Wise, even if scriptures do say that, for the moment I'm not concerned, because I'm just worried about what Timber's presenting. But I'm going to go back to passing the mic around, because hello, Zombie Kill a Chick. Welcome back. What are your core values? Why don't you tell us?
Oh my god. My core values. That's interesting. I think that they've some kind of like base values that I have are I try to treat people like I would like to be treated. I obviously I think I jumped into the discussion over violence versus being peaceful. I think inherently there are times where uh, we do we are violent, and I try to, not that I'm a big hippie or pacifist, but I try not to lash out at people. However, I have had in the past where there are dangerous situations or whatever where I've had to get in the middle of things. So I have, um, been responded in violence on occasion, and I don't think it's always the best way to go. However, there are people that are sometimes totally out of control under a controlled substance, or maybe a substance that we don't really know what's on board. That you have to restrain or mitigate maybe violence that they're perpetrating on someone else. Let's see, I don't know. Core values. I would say being honest and in having integrity. That's something that I value. I don't like people who lie. I would much rather hear the down and dirty deets and be open to how they treat me versus you know um, being lied to because they think that would be a better way to like get in my pocket or something. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. So I guess something I would want to clarify, and maybe you're in line with other people who have been here today, and maybe not, but like that idea of not wanting to be part of violence, but sometimes violence has to happen. Is that part of like a larger do least harm kind of thing, or is that part of something else?
Yeah, I think it's just part of like a maybe in work a duty to act to if I see somebody that's getting beat or stabbed or then I have to inflict violence on the person who is doing that in order to get them restrained or get them under control so someone doesn't get hurt worse.
Yeah. So that's, oh gosh, I wish we had some of the people who were here earlier on that, because the duty to act thing hasn't been, that phrasing has not been used today. So now I'm excited.
I can't stay long. I got stuff going on, but I wanted to pop in because I knew it was your Morality Monday talk.
Yeah, well, thank you, and glad you did pop in.
Do you have this every Monday?
Yeah, we try to. There have been some small exceptions, but generally, yes, that is the goal.
And is the idea like you pose a question and then people come in, like give you your thoughts on it, give you their thoughts on it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's been a lot of things. Sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a premise. A couple times I've used a specific moral dilemma taken from the literature. It always kind of varies, and it's usually every week is kind of a spin-off of what happened the previous week because I get inspired by some comment.
Oh, interesting. And is it just on Mondays, or are there other days?
We have talks on the Discord every day. Morality, well, Mondays are explicitly morality. It's the only day that's explicitly morals, but that's not to say that we don't end up talking about morality as part of everything else, because that's kind of natural.
It's the only day
Tuesdays are a theory of mine.
Friday can be a mishmash of sex or crime, which I host.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
If you guys go up to the if you scroll up on the left-hand side of the Discord, there's a weekly schedule tab, and somewhere in there, I'll have to go back, I can repost it. There's a list that kind of describes what each day is generally intended to be, though we do change that up at times. I'll repost it just so that at the bottom of weekly schedule, just so that people have it.
And I feel like I miss about every other Friday due to just life.
I don't show up in. I lead Mondays, but I don't show up in here every day just because life happens and sometimes you can't do that.
Do you guys ever read like papers or like literature on morality at all?
Individually, we don't as a group. That's something we could do at some point, but that's not prescribed, so to speak.
Who are like some of your favorite philosophers who work in ethics?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you have any favorite like or philosophers on the topic?
Me personally, no. I'm still educating myself on a lot of different ethics and philosophy things. I respect some of the stuff done by the ancient philosophers. Little bit of Renaissance, little bit of modern here. A lot of people in the Discord you'll hear throw out like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, and stuff like that a lot. I typically don't do a lot of that because I think there's some issues with that thinking, but I value their opinions certainly, and I'm aware of generally what they believe.
Who's your favorite philosopher?
Like I said, I don't really have a favorite. I kind of develop my own view based on bits and pieces of things I find to be true from other people. Some people on here might have a better answer than that. I just personally don't.
Yeah, I don't read much. I mean, I have read philosophy, but I read a lot of like research papers that are more scientifically based. I just read one the other night that I found interesting on if you've ever heard the term front stage. Irving Goffman is the sociologist behind kind of coining that, and that's kind of like what is visible. I'm looking at it more for like social media, like what's visible to the audience in your front stage part of your performance, but then while backstage actions or like what people don't actually see. Just because I feel like there's a lot of really superficial people on social media, and they're like really only showing you the good stuff. They're not showing you unfiltered face and things like that.
We should talk Johari Window sometime, Zombie.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And I'm kind of applying that to like the world of sex trafficking. I like to, on occasion, I don't really know who's on here. Are we recorded?
We are on YouTube currently, but I think I'm gonna suggest we turn that off soon because we've been going for a little over 3 hours, and I think we're kind of tapped out on the central conversation. But
yeah.
But I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a couple more minutes if people want to speak more on the core values piece. We can touch on that again before we ditch our YouTube friends.
Yeah, now I'm interested to hear like everybody else's core values since I kind of came in here late, or what the common threads were that were brought up.
Oh, well, I can tell you because I took some notes. As far as like basic values, like the thing that's more foundational than anything else, we've heard well-being, and we've had 4 different definitions of that term. We've had that we're doing okay and basically not dead. We've had honesty. We've had doing whatever you naturally want to do. Comfort, adaptation, ideological openness. We've had the golden rule, responsibility. We had Christ in here briefly. And then like the pinnacle of virtue and value, we've had like self-actualization, flourishing the species, do the least harm, and peace most recently. That's kind of the spectrum we're working with, but we mostly got in the weeds on what is well-being versus do the least harm, so we were there for a good hour and a half, as I'm sure you can imagine.
That's a long time, but that's cool.
Yeah, and I can see Chad laughing because he knows it's true.
You dug down in the weeds on that one, huh?
Well, how do we not? I mean, how does this Discord exist if that doesn't happen at least once a day?
Right.
So, is there anything you heard in there that you really take issue with or absolutely love, Zombie?
No, I just I think that we all independently come up with a set of core values, and I think that they might also kind of stick with us for that we may have additional ones that we add as we go. I don't think as a child that I would have thought about honesty and integrity and lying as a young child. Like, I don't think I really understood the concept of lying when I was super little. So I think that's something I probably added later in life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we didn't touch on that today, and maybe we should, but the fact that, I mean, children are probably going to have different values than we do as adults because, children don't know things, but then values get imposed by adult figures, and do they actually believe those or not? And
yeah, I think even the term like the golden rule, that's something that's learned.
Mm-hmm. 1 second.
Looks like we have a mutiny forming down an open discussion.
Yeah, and well, and that's fine with me. And if I think we're probably good to close the formal part of today. And Trav, if you want to do anything about the little mutiny, or you want me to pop down there for a
No,
bit,
I think
we can decide what to do.
I think as usual, we'll just invite everyone to join us in Trav's Tav after the discussion here. And thanks to Alex for hosting again. Brilliant stuff.
Thanks, Alex.
And tomorrow,
Absolutely.
I haven't come up with a topic for tomorrow, but maybe I'll invite some believers in God to come in and try to convince me out of my hedonist atheism.
Very cool.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It was nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice meeting you too.
All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in on YouTube and on our new radio station, Live 365 Pangburn. As always, let art and science inspire.